Good afternoon and welcome to Amplifying Community Action Innovation, a national webinar event. I am Taylor Daniels, Senior Associate for Learning and Dissemination at the Partnership. Today, I have the pleasure of being the moderator of this phenomenal panel. I'm also joined by my colleague, Denise Waits, who is the Program Assistant at the Partnership. Adenise will be running behind the scenes technology for today's webinar. If you have any technical questions, you may use the Q&A box to ask those questions to Denise, and she'll be able to get back with you directly. Just a few quick technical notes before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available to you all through a follow-up email and on the partnership's website. Please note that you all obviously are muted for this presentation, but you will be able to hear us through your computer speakers. Towards the end of our conversation, we'll take questions from the audience. So if anything comes to mind throughout our conversation and while our panelists are speaking, please just put it in the chat, or you can send those to us in the Q&A box as well. Next slide, Denise. Okay, and we're going to hop over and we're going to start with our land acknowledgements. We like to begin all of our meetings with the open original of an acknowledgement. We acknowledge that every community owes its existence and vitality to the generations from around the world who have contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led us to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, and some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations that can be counted. For me, I am based in Washington, D.C. For me, this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Nacatac people, and I pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We invite you all to deliver your statement in the chat by including the land and the people relevant to the land that you are occupying during this session. Next slide, please. And of course, we like to also round our meetings starting with the promise of community action. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and make America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So again, as I mentioned, I am Taylor Daniel. I am the Senior Associate for Learning and Dissemination at the Partnership. And I just want to go through our agenda, our layout for today's session. First, we are going to have some introductions about the webinar and also our panelists. And for our panelists, following that, we will have our panel presentation with 3 agencies, KCEOC, Total Community Action, and Mid-Iowa Community Action. Followed by that, we'll have a roundtable discussion, and that will be our Q&A period. Followed by that, we will wrap up with some in-cap resources and some upcoming events. Thank you. So for nearly 60 years, community action agencies have played a pivotal role in addressing poverty by supporting thriving communities and promoting economic mobility for people and families. Under a cooperative agreement with the Office of Community Service, the partnership worked with RPICS to highlight some of that work. We wanted to identify and showcase the high impact, innovative strategies that agencies are doing every day. Through this partnership, RPICS identifies 65 examples of high impact, innovative strategies. These examples have come to be recognized as highlighted initiatives. We received examples from agencies focusing on education, housing, and homelessness, youth, unemployment, transportation, and recidivism, just to name a few. These initiatives have been featured nationally on a great new platform that we created called the Community Action Showcase. They've also been highlighted at conferences and webinar, in-cap conferences, and regionally at conferences and webinar regional convenings held by RPICS. Each highlighted initiative meets the same criteria based on the Center of Excellence and Core Operating Principles, and input from the COE Steering Committee. These initiatives all address local need. They demonstrate the use of CSBG funds. They show transformative impact. They show evidence and data-informed advances equity, and it is guided by the voice of its customers. The goal of this work is to identify the high impact approaches high impact approaches such as these, so that we can learn more about the underlying practices that support community action innovation, and create and disseminate tools and resources to support network capacity building. After we showcased these 65 initiatives, there was a partnership with the Learning Communities Resource Center. For those who don't know, LCRC for short is the Learning and Innovation Hub for the network. The partnership with LCRC created the Implementing Innovative Practices Learning Community Group. By participating in this learning community group, the agencies were provided with an opportunity to maximize implementation of their respective innovations by providing peer sharing, deepening connections to evidence-based and evidence-informed research, and give immersion to tools that would strengthen how they could communicate their impact and transform their important work. For this webinar, we invited a few agencies with highlighted initiatives to share some ideas and support the potential adoption of their highlighted initiatives throughout the Community Action Network. Today, we are joined by Jennifer Smith, who is the VP for Program Operations at KCEOC Community Action in Gary, Kentucky. Jennifer has been working for KCEOC for almost 26 years. She began her career as a case manager for the homeless, learning firsthand of the struggles and barriers that families in poverty face. Jennifer will be representing Ryan's Place, a crisis center for youth ages 18 to 24 who are experiencing homelessness. We are also joined by Thelma French, President and CEO of Total Community Action Agency in New Orleans, Louisiana. For years, Thelma has been a champion advocate for early childhood development, quality and equitable education, and employment opportunities. Her and her team at Total describes themselves as a continuous learning community group. Thelma will be talking about the STAND program, Stepping Toward a New Direction, a program that focuses on recidivism reduction. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Clarissa Thompson. Clarissa Thompson has been Mid-Iowa Community Action Executive Director since 2019. She has a wealth of experience in both direct service provision and in leading major federal, state, and local initiatives designed to improve outcomes for children and families. Clarissa will be sharing some feedback or some going over the Spread the Words, Read by Third, and that is an early reading program. So with that, I will hand it off to my first panelist. Jennifer, it's on you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the introduction and happy to be joined by my fellow panelists today. As she said, I'm going to be talking just briefly about Ryan's Place. Again, I'm with KCEOC Community Action Partnership located in Knox County, Kentucky. Our project is called Ryan's Place. It is a 4-room, 8-bed facility for homeless youth. We define homeless youth as those ranging from ages 18 to 24. Ryan's Place, I wanted to start out by telling you a little bit about how Ryan's Place got its name. I think it's important to our story and our journey to where we are today. Ryan was a teenager who had been served by KCEOC on several occasions. Ryan was with his mother. She had a number of issues throughout her little bit of a tenure with her struggles as she came to KCEOC for services. I'm sure we all share knowing our clients that come back to our agencies for services on several occasions. But even when he was not in our shelter, he would come to our shelter for help. Sometimes he would even walk to our shelter, and we're 7 miles out of town, and he would still walk even when he just needed a meal, or he just needed anything. He knew we was there to help him. So Ryan happened to be at our shelter when the pre-planning for Ryan's Place got started. So we were able to recruit him to be on what was the pre-planning phases for the state, for the initiative for the state's board that started. And it was called the Youth Action Board. And he actually even designed the logo that's still being used for the state action plan. So Ryan loved to rap. He loved rap music. And he once said that I'm just a ghost in society, but KCEOC stands beside me. But unfortunately, Ryan was killed in a car accident when he was just 19 years old. And this just motivated us more, because we always felt like Ryan and young people that were homeless, they kind of fell through the cracks a little bit. And but we made it our mission that if we were able to get funding to do something to help homeless youth, that we were going to do it in Ryan's memory and to honor him. So the journey to launch our initiative seemed quite extensive. We had known for many years that we had a problem with homeless youth. There was a lack of resources. And if you've ever worked with the homeless, you understand that dealing with homeless adults versus youth, they have many unique needs. So for a long time, there was really no specialized resources. We even really didn't know what we were getting ourselves into until we got started. We were serving homeless youth, but we were serving them through our traditional methods. But for a number of years, we've been trying to kind of do just a bit of an assessment, kind of counting those, how many calls are we getting from the high schools? How many calls are we getting from service providers? How many calls are we getting from different folks? How many calls are we getting from homeless youth? Just trying to figure out, what are those needs? But one of the main things we use, and again, if you do homeless programs, you are probably familiar with your homeless management information system, and we're putting everybody in the system so we can run reports to see how many homeless youth we're actually seeing out there in the community that we're actually serving, because we have had homeless programs since 1995. So we've been serving the homeless for a really long time. So, but those traditional programs don't always, like I said, address those unique needs. So we could see that there's, again, people falling through the cracks as far as our homeless youth is concerned. So, but thankfully, one of our funders, Kentucky Housing Corporation, they actually approached us when a funding opportunity became available. That's kind of how the wheels started rolling. Sometimes when you have a history of providing services in the community, funders will contact you and say, this funding it looks like it's going to become available. Would like you to apply, would like you to compete for these funds. So the state basically came together to develop a plan. That's the plan that Ryan helped out with. He was, like I said, on that local action group. Agencies came together, funders came together, other partners came together, those interested and that had a stake in serving the homeless, schools, that sort of thing, resource centers, a lot of different folks come together, and they developed a plan for the state. That was one of the first steps. And the ultimate goals of the programs that were to be developed, and I'm just going to read these briefly to you, was to bring about stable housing. All youth will have a stable and reliable place to call home. Permanent connections. All youth will have ongoing permanent connections to families, communities, schools, and other positive social networks. There would be education and employment. All youth will have high performance in and completion of educational and training activities, especially for younger youth, and starting and maintaining adequate and stable employment, particularly for older youth. And social emotional well-being. All youth will develop key competencies, attitudes, and behaviors that will equip them to succeed across multiple domains of daily life, including school, work, relationships, and community. and that's the things we try to do at Ryan's Place. The people that come there can stay there 6 months, sometimes a little longer. And what we do there is we try to prepare them to be out on their own. When the youth come to Ryan's Place, they're not always equipped with the life skills they need, because you have to remember they've suffered trauma, they've had a number of things that's went on in their lives. They've not been taught the life skills that maybe our kids have been taught throughout their lives. They don't, some kids, they have no idea how to clean up. They don't know how to be on their own. They don't know how to wash their clothes. They don't know how to prepare a meal. They don't know how to talk to people. We have kids with autism, severe autism. We have youth that have barely made it through school or have not finished school. We have kids that have been set out on graduation day that we've had to go pick up because their parents have put them out on the day of my daughter's graduate from high school in just a few weeks. And I can't imagine having her stuff packed and putting her out of the house that day. And that's what's happening to some of our youth. They're exiting out of foster care, they're parenting youth, they're just a variety of situations. So the impact this project has had on the community, customers, and stakeholders has varied. But the biggest thing that's provided is a resource that we never realized would reach so many lives, and it would be so needed. I always talk about how I completely underestimated how much this project would be needed, because I thought we would serve about 15 youth a year. We're serving probably 40 youth a year with just 8 beds. So the sooner we can get them stabilized into permanent housing, the more youth we can take. I completely underestimated the support of the community. We had problems in the beginning where anything that happened in our little town got our 8 little youth got blamed for everything bad that went wrong. But eventually the community started seeing that it's not these young people that's causing havoc in the town. There's more than 8 young people in the town that may be causing issues. So they began to embrace our youth and be more helpers to them instead of blaming them if something happened, because it's hard having a homeless shelter. If you want to, it's not really a homeless shelter, it's a youth crisis center. It's transitional housing in the middle of your town. But like I said, they eventually began to embrace it. So that coming into town in the beginning was kind of difficult, but it's got a lot better in the last 4 years. So let's see. So we are very proud that we've seen a lot of our youth succeed, that we've grown so much about how we've learned. We've learned some new terms for ourselves, like the word adultism. You can't treat youth like they're children. You know, the youth homeless, you have to realize that, you know, they're adults and they can make their own decisions, and you need to work to support that and to help guide that. It's different than dealing with, you know, they're not your children. You guide them and help them. And we've been really, learned that their hopes and dreams are the same as any other youth. You know, I have a child their age, and, you know, seeing that, you know, same things he wants, they want, and to help them reach that is pretty remarkable. And to see our staff working with them is pretty amazing, to see what, you know, how rewarding their job is to them, because they're able to help them reach those goals. One of the key things I've seen is you've got to have the right staff to work with this population. We probably went through 4 or 5 coordinators. We had a older gentleman, he wanted to be militant dad. We had somebody their age working with them. He wanted to be, actually a couple closer to their age, they wanted to be their buddy. You can't do that. You have to have somebody that can really, you know, be objective and treat them as an adult, and but also separate. You can't be their mother, you can't be their father. You have to be objective and be the professional. And got an excellent fit now, and that was one of the hardest things to find. The community support, Union College has been great. They offer every youth that comes through Ryan's Place that wants to go to college, they can go to Union College for free. They'll provide everything they need if they want to go to college. So any youth that comes through there that wants an education, they can go there and get their education. The partnerships have been great. Everybody is extremely supportive. Anything we need, they'll provide it. And the funder, HUD has been really great. They're our primary funder. They have been great. They actually expanded some of their and added what's called special activities. They'll allow things such as they'll allow startup kits for household items now. They'll allow cleaning supplies so that our case manager can go in when the youth moves out and get them cleaning supplies and show them how to clean their new apartment, which is very important for youth to maintain stability in housing. So there's a lot of things that's been great with that. We have another component to Ryan's Place, which is another program that offers rental assistance, utility assistance to help them establish housing. That's a whole nother story, but that was another grant we applied for with Ryan's Place, to not just to house them at Ryan's Place, but I actually help them get stabilized in new housing. And that grant now allows us to provide 3 years of rental support, which is absolutely necessary in some cases for homeless youth, because it does take longer for them to become stable in housing. Normally with regular adults, we usually provide about a year of rental assistance and utility assistance, but with the youth, we found that 2 years is probably good, but we have one client, for instance, right now that we just approved another year. He has autism, and it's taken a little bit longer to help him stabilize. And so you have those cases. So I think that's the only thing I need to say about that, but I'm just really proud of our community. I'm really proud of our staff. I'm really proud of Ryan's Place, of how we've grown. We've had our struggles, but I feel like we're in really good footing right now, and I just really look forward to what's coming in the future. So we're in a really good place.
Thank you, Jennifer. I have a few questions. We do have one question in the chat. I know I said I'll wait for the end, but I'm just going to throw this out there. Amy asks, is there any chance that the youth benchmarks that you mentioned could be disseminated somehow? I don't know if it's information that's shareable, but I did want to ask that question.
Oh, the goals for the program? Is that? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's public information. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Amy, we will make sure we get that to you. And thanks, Jennifer. So with that, our next person, a panelist that we have is the Thelma French. Go ahead and take it away, Thelma.
Good morning from Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm here to talk about our human capacity and transformation initiative called STAND, Stepping Toward a New Direction. I'd like to lay a little foundation as to how we developed this service model. And that is in 2012, with a new mayor in office 2 years, we had a spike in our crime. And he decided that one of the strategies that he would implement would be to target high-risk youth, risk who are highly involved in criminal activity. And we had a member of his staff walk up to TCA and say, look, you serve everybody. You serve the whole family. You don't just serve the person that comes in. Would you be interested in being our lead case management entity for our gang violence reduction strategy? Met with our Opportunity Center staff and the wonderful master case manager, Ms. Sydney Jean Monroe, and we decided to take the challenge. We did not know at that time what we were stepping into. We read the research about Ceasefire Boston and Ceasefire Chicago, and we realized that our gang violence reduction strategy was going to be based on a Ceasefire Boston model. So we began to look for a team of case managers or interventionists who looked like the population we were going to serve, which were young men who may have been court involved, the system involved, or had street credibility, who could work with this population under the leadership of a seasoned youth developer. And we built our first team. Well, as we began to do that work, we realized that Louisiana has the highest per capita incarceration rates in the United States. Of every 100,000 residents in our state, 816 are incarcerated, which is double the national average. So working with the population of at-risk youth who are either court involved or formerly court involved, we began to work with how do we turn this table completely and reduce the recidivism rate, because we have the second highest recidivism rate in the nation. So our work began from direct service delivery to policy and advocacy, because with the support of the Pew Foundation in 2017, we were able to get 10 bills passed in our state legislature under justice reinvestment initiatives, which allowed us to be able to reinvest savings by passing bills that took away some probably pre-Reconstruction sentencing practices and reinvent our criminal justice system and reinvest those savings in reentry services. And so we have an acronym for every model at TCA. So our acronym became STAND, stepping toward a new direction. We wanted it to be a positive move, not just a reentry services. And so while we were still working with high risk, at-risk males and females between the ages of 17 and 24, we had a large population of reentering citizens who under the JRI legislation, their sentences were being reduced, or some of them were actually being just released. And we wanted to make sure that there was a place in our community where they could get holistic services. So STAND is based on our whole family approach model. We take the entire family, not just the reentering citizen, but we service the entire family. And with all of our other program supports, as Sydney will always say, coming with the young person will come often family reunification. You could have been away from a home. And so that brought our case management team, and we began to employ case managers who were formerly incarcerated persons and providing that support. So, you know, we don't just walk the walk, we talk it, we live it. And so we are proud of our work, but our work has also not only centered around direct service delivery, but we have been active in our collaborative work or our collective impact work. We have a large reentry task force that is made up of over 84 organizations that service substance abuse, family reunification, legal support, housing support, employment and training support. So while we don't have to do all of it, we have a system of case managers that are tightly networked with all of our partners. In the reentry task force, there are 11 working groups, and TCA has members in 7 of the working groups. And so one of the most innovative pieces that came out of that collective impact work was in 2019, when justice reinvestment was really rolling, we were going to have 2,000 individuals released in one day. And so the CEOs of all of the agencies, we were all on point. We were at the workforce center on the phone like we were running a crisis intervention or a storm reduction, our emergency operations plan. But we had our case managers at the reentry site at parole and probation. And out of that collective sharing and work came our triage. And our triage model is now a national model for reentry point of service. Each case manager did not say, I can only do this. They connected that individual with all the services that were needed or all the linkages, and they were not soft pass-offs, they were hard pass-offs to the other agencies. And today, triage still happens. The teams go to the parole and probation office and meet reentering citizens where they are. So this has been a journey. And as the journey moved, so did the pandemic come about. And we were invited by CEO Works, who had proposed to one of the largest funders Ford Foundation to fund a returning citizen stimulus grant, because we knew that prisons across the nation were releasing individuals who were close to release to reduce the COVID pandemic inside of prisons. And so we were one of the partners selected for RCS, and our data, this was our first time to have an external evaluation of our reentry model. RCS include and partner with MDRC to evaluate the sites. We had some of the best outcome data of the sites. The RCS model was based on a 30, 60, and 90-day financial supplement to the reentering citizens if they met the benchmarks. And benchmarks included in 30 days connection to workforce, connection to financial futures, and referral to housing. So we actually had all of those services internally. We didn't have to refer out. We have a housing counselor, we have our budgeting and our workforce team. We are part of the network of Strive providers in our community. We no longer have Strive as the funded model, but we all still have our workforce opportunity centers. In the first phase, we had 97% of our participants to meet the 30-day benchmark. In phase 2, which was the 6-month benchmark, they would have completed their workforce preparedness and would have entered skill training. They would have participated in one family reunification activity, and they had met their 60-day individual service plan. We were now at 87% of our participants meeting those benchmarks. And with each benchmark, they got another financial contribution, direct financial payment from RCS. When we got to the 90-day benchmark, we were down to 75% of our participants completing, but we exceeded the national average. And one of our participants was featured in the New York Times, a female reentering citizen, as the interviewee for the RCS program. What that research showed is that the financial assistance, cash assistance, was crucial to their survival and their ability to reduce recidivism, because they come out with no funding, and it allowed them to have a base with the supports provided through other services. So we've been lucky that we have had a funders table in our community that works with the criminal justice system. And we've been able, because we are networked and we partner, there are one partner that does the first 72 hours release, and then they refer to us for the next phase. So it is a shared practice, a collaborative practice. We're not in this alone, but our role has been steady. Past all of the outside funding, we've stayed committed. We still have a reentry case manager, because this is still a very critical need for our family stabilization and our whole family approach. So STAN is just one of the populations that is a part of Total Family, which, as I said, we have an acronym for everything. Our whole family approach is called Total Family, and it services multiple populations with the right services for that population at the right time. We are a partnership base. We believe in connectivity. We believe in supporting the needs of our community, and we reevaluate where our needs are every 3 years, and we add services. And I think one of our successes is that we are open. Sometimes they quote said the CEO is too open to new innovation and new opportunities, but it makes us truly the trusted voice in our community. And it has paid off for us being invited to additional resources, not having to always go and seek them. And so we're proud of this work, and our learning community was made up of multiple staff from around our agency who wanted to learn about how innovation happens. And we are one team, one TCA. And I will defer to the roundtable for any other discussion.
Thanks, Thelma. We appreciate that. I do have more questions, so you don't have to worry. But before we get to the roundtable, we have Clarissa from Mid-Iowa Community Action. Clarissa, take it away.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about our Innovative Strategies project. I should tell everyone that this project that I'm going to talk about has occurred over 18 years. So to kind of think about, where we started, how we started, and where we are today has been quite an incredible journey. And there's a lot of stories to tell in between. So I hope I don't take myself off into a tangent. But to begin, what we know today in our community in Marshalltown, which is a community around 27,000 members, our initiative is called Spread the Words, Read by Third. And it was really geared towards improving third grade reading proficiency. So 8, 9, 10-year-olds and their reading proficiency. But before we got to that title and where we are today, our journey actually began as an invitation from a funder. And this invitation from the funder came to us in 2005. And the funder asked us to bring a group of community representatives to a statewide convening to focus on reducing poverty. So our executive director at the time, Arlene McAtee, invited a handful of community members to go to this event. And while we're at the event, we were doing what Marshalltown does, and we're collaborative. We know we all have a role to play in any effort that we're moving forward and are a truly collaborative approach. While we're in the meeting, we realized that there were other communities coming to watch what Marshalltown was doing. And it was at that moment we realized maybe we had something more special than we even realized. And that journey from that day of trying to reduce poverty as the initiative really turned into a focus on education. Because as we were talking about reducing poverty in the community, we didn't really get the buy-in or really expand the partnership. But when we really flipped it to education, that's where we started to see some engagement. And when we talked about education, it wasn't just one size fits all. It was a true collaborative approach around affecting change in that space. And our initiative was renamed. We're like Total. We have lots of acronyms and things to move us forward. But the focus was on an event of start sooner, stay longer, keep learning. So start sooner was all around early childhood education. Stay longer was looking at impacting high school graduation, and keep learning was lifelong learning to create that sense of a community that we have these pillars in place. And with that, we really just kind of even honed in more on strategy. What does it mean for school readiness? How do we get more children involved in Head Start, involved in preschool? And at the time when we were moving forward those specific goals, the state of Iowa did not have universal pre-K. So that was, private preschools, Head Start, community-based preschools were the provider of those experiences. And since our time in the 18 years of this story, we now have universal pre-K in Iowa. But even our school district wasn't an early adopter of that. So there was things that we were able to influence to have our school district to get into that system, and we've been involved in that. And Stay Longer was really addressing, at the time of this initiative being started, there was a very crucial law that schools had to meet around percentages of children meeting third grade test scores and reading. So there was a lot of sanctions if schools didn't perform at the levels needed. And Keep Learning was really to address the business needs of having folks come out of high school with extra credentials to be future employees, excuse me. So all those things were happening. So that's where that data piece comes in. We had the data, we knew the needs, and we had additional needs that we know about our community of Marshalltown. So at the time, 2005, we were using data related to free and reduced lunch rate. That's a real-time data point. They can give you the where folks are at. And the school district of elementary, we have 6 elementaries, we're looking at around 80% of the children in the school district at free or reduced lunch. And today, we're not much further than that. We're probably a little higher, and we have a population of over 50 languages spoken in our school district of 5,000 students. So we knew we had a diversity of needs that we needed to also address. So kind of that's the, kind of the beginning lines of where we were at. So, and at that time, what we were holding together was Micah was considered the key partner in this work, but we were also joined by a local philanthropic entity that was kind of co-leading or co-working with us on this initiative. At the same time, if you're been in community action or been around long, 2005 kind of rolled into 2008, which provided an opportunity in the ARA funding. And so that really gave us some seed money to really innovate and try some different strategies to dig deeper into these needs. And one of those strategies that we tried along the way was a summer learning opportunity, because we knew, to have influence in third grade reading stores, the risk any student has in the summer months of losing gains was something that we thought we needed to take a stab at and really try to figure out how could we influence third grade reading stores by providing more year-round school. We even actually had a community study about would a year-round school opportunity meet our needs. And again, I'll digress because we have lots of tunnels to go down. But where we are today is really a lot of work that has gone on, all community partner based. So this wasn't us doing this alone. I'll get to the point of how we transition and how we are where we are today. So not only 2005 is when we started the opportunity, 2008 brought a really good funding opportunity to us to kind of try and learn more. And then came along a national initiative around third grade reading. So maybe in a local community that you're in, you may have heard of the grade level reading campaign. And so we were really in a good place to be able to apply to become an All-America city, to have a plan to address third grade reading. And as a community, we submitted a plan and were awarded an opportunity for grade level reading initiative. But that didn't necessarily bring funding to us, but it brought us connection to research, connection to data, because that campaign really looked at three things around third grade reading. They were looking at summer learning, they were looking at attendance, and they were looking at family engagement. So those were the things that we were already addressing in our initiatives that we were trying. So that just gave us even more information, strategies, connection, and trials. So we started our summer learning program at one local community school. And today, that summer learning model is in all 6 elementary schools. Today, that initiative, many years later, this may be the last summer that Micah is leading the initiative, because we're seeing that the summer learning model has had such an impact that the school district has plans to absorb that and sustain that work because of the difference in the data, the change, the strategies that we've had in place has had a long-term effect. So it's kind of a fast forward to where we are today. But the other thing that has impact as well is in 2018, again, through all of our work that we had been working with partnerships, data, collaboration, we were able to apply for a federal Department of Education full service community school grant. So we've had that funding for the last 5 years to kind of keep some of the things that we've been trying and then create a final sustainability plan. And where we are today with attendance is in that plan as well. We've had huge influence in attendance practices in our school district, and it's related to chronic absenteeism. And that strategy that we have worked with to change the work that we're doing in attendance, we also adopted that practice in our Head Start programming. So we didn't, we took it to a broad approach. And so as families in the Marshalltown School District come to Head Start First, it's not a new practice. They're familiar with how they transition and attendance matters. And again, the attendance work that we have modeled and how to play in is also planned to be sustained by the school district once we're out of this grant opportunity. So there's a lot of stories I could share, but the takeaways for us, it was community engagement all the way. We couldn't do this work alone. Data was a key player in our ability to know what was needed and how do we keep learning and growing from that data. And the research and the support that we've had through the network and through our initiatives and the campaign for grade level reading has made a huge impact in our community. So thank you for letting me talk about 18 years of services, but in the end, this story ends really well for us in the community we're in.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations on having a great model that the school district has decided that we want to do it to. So congratulations on that. So I want to dive in on a few questions. We have about 10 minutes. So we just want to be respectful of everyone's time. Each of you talked about your programs, and they have been around for a different length of time. Obviously, Clarissa, 18 years, total with Stan, going back to 2008. Ryan's Place, still pretty old as well. I want to know one question I think that we talk about is sustainability. I would appreciate if you all could talk about how you all or your agency was able to sustain your initiatives over a period of time, because obviously when implementing the program, we want to see how we can make that last. So what did you do to make your initiative and your project last? And whoever wants to jump in and go first, please do.
I'll jump in, Taylor. I think that for TCA, we began this work with supportive or additional funding provided by the city and philanthropy. But as the importance to the actual community need grew, we made a commitment that in our CSBG program model, that we would always have the staffing capacity. Now, we've continuously reached for other resources to support our housing assistance, to support some of the specialized service delivery, but our commitment to whole family and to meeting the needs of our community, and yet again, based upon the data of our needs of our community, from our Head Start children who have FIPs or even incarcerated individuals as parents, we know that there's seriously a need. So first was the commitment that this is a major community need, therefore it is a part of our basic program budget and model, then supporting it with enhancements through other funding opportunities is how we've continued not only to provide the services, but to tailor the services to the changing needs in our community. Our COVID model was based upon the fact that we were an established provider with outcome data. We were invited to that RCS supportive services around providing reentry citizens stimulus in the COVID, because we have established data and outcomes, and we have walking, talking billboards. We have individuals who are in permanent positions, who acquired homes, who tell everybody, I went to TCA. And so that has opened the door for us and gotten us invited to tables more than us having to solicit tables. So.
And I was going to share very similar to Total is, we may have started the initiative with CSBG to, dive deeper, see a little bit, but then because of the data and the research and the practice that we were planning for, we were eligible for grants. So we've had grants, we've had 2 federal grants, we've had state grants. And when those, they come and go, right? But there was a year, I want to say like year 6, year 7 into this, when our summer learning program, we were out of funding, but we didn't have another funding source yet. the commitment was there to keep going. And we glued that together that year with CSBG. It didn't look like it did 3 years ago, but we kept it going and enough that we could get momentum back to then have other opportunities. And so that's really grants or no grants, it was CSBG and the commitment that the agency and the community had to keep this initiative going, to see the change and see it out and see if we could have the impact that we have today.
Our project, it was initially funded for 2 years. It's under the it's under HUD. It's the Continuum of Care Youth Homeless Demonstration Program. And it was included in the third year, it was included 1 year cycles under the Continuum of Care program, which all of our Continuum of Care programs are under that 1 year cycle. We have one Continuum of Care program that's been in that cycle for 26 years, which was the program I was hired under 26 years ago. So, I mean, unfortunately, that it is what it is. I mean, that's how it will continue to be funded. I mean, it's $200,000. I mean, there's no way we can fundraise that money. But now CSBG does help support that. Ron's Place, it does help support our other homeless youth program to help supplement it. Or, I mean, you can't always operate on what funds that they give you to help support our homeless youth. But those are in 1 year cycles, as all Continuum of Care programs are in the whole United States. So if they take away that funding, then every homeless program in the United States is going to go away under the Continuum of Care. So that's just how that program works.
Thank you. So I want to ask this question, and this can be for any one of our panelists. We're talking about these programs and the successes that you accomplished in these programs. But I think one thing that we want to shed some light on is, what are some areas that you've struggled with and how you had to evaluate, evolve, and change your approach from that? And obviously we know that money is not unlimited. So outside of dollars and funding, what is an area that you may have struggled with in the implementation or the continuation of your project?
I guess I'll start again. I guess the area that was the most challenging for us was getting the entire agency to buy into serving these two one high-risk population and the other with a stigma, even though everybody's got one in their family. I'm sorry. In the state that incarcerates, 1 out of every 5 of our families we serve had a formerly incarcerated individual. But really getting everybody to understand that the better outcome or the community outcome was that if we reduce recidivism and we connect people to sustainable incomes, we reduce crime in our community. I think that the work with the high-risk individuals was seen as scary, but because of the team that was put in place, and the other challenge was being trusted by them, having them to trust that we were there. I'm going to say, as somebody mentioned, I think my colleague from Kentucky mentioned, not as their buddies, but as their champions and as their advocates, but also holding them accountable. I have a little speech that I will do to them. You can't come in our door with one hand in front of me and a gun in the other one in behind your back. And so I'm going to be real, so you got to be real. And our team was available for them on Saturdays, Sundays, if we couldn't meet with them until late in the afternoon. So it was changing a model of how the agency operated. And I think that is an evolutionary piece that has done us really phenomenal outcomes as an agency, really believing that we're here to meet the needs of the community, not to work between the hours of 8 and 4 or 4:30. We don't punch a clock. We are a service agency. So if we've got different work hours and different service models to meet the community where they are. And so those were evolutionary growing changes internally for our agency.
I concur with what Thelma said, because we see this, saw the same issues, but I just want to say one more thing about that is one of the things we've done, because we had that NIMBY mentality when we first put, a homeless center, right in the middle of town. But also we worked with our youth to try to push leadership development, because we do want our youth, they don't have to, we don't force anything. They don't even have to do case management. They, we ask them to do and present these services to them. They're not required to do any of the services we offer them. They're adults, they can choose to do that. They're not required to. But we do present leadership development classes for them, and ask them to participate, partner them with like our senior citizen center to, for instance, serve meals and do different activities, so that people can see a different side, because they have this picture in their mind of what a homeless person is like, and they don't picture them as community service providers, for instance. But we do present those leadership opportunities and those leadership, that knowledge of how to be a leader in your community, and so that people can see, we're not breaking confidentiality and saying, oh, here's these homeless people, but we let them see that youth in the community can be, can offer a contribution to the community, and you don't have to be afraid if you see somebody out in the community doing something, and then maybe later you see them around Ryan's Place, and they're not going to hurt you. They're not going to, if they look different from you, because we do promote equity, and we do see, transgender youth. We see different cultures and different, a lot of different people come in and out of Ryan's Place, and so we don't want people to be afraid. And we are in Eastern Kentucky, but we do see a lot of diversity come through our doors, and we don't want people to be afraid, and we want people to see that these young people are just like everybody else, and that they just want to be treated like everybody else, and they are contributing to their community. But we also want people to be respectful and to see them as just somebody else, just wanting to be, recognized just like everybody else, just be kind, And so we do try to get them involved, and we call it leadership development. Somebody else might call it something else. That's just what we call it. It sounds fancy, sounds nice. But just to give them those opportunities to show the world, so to speak, that they're good people, but they just need those opportunities that they've never been afforded. So.
I know that we're almost out of time, so I'll just share really quickly. I can't believe I didn't share this in my presentation. But it's also, I think Jennifer might have kind of alluded to this too, but in the very beginning of our project, we spent a lot of time changing the narrative, and there was a lot of blame in our community around, blaming parents for children not succeeding in school, blaming the school for not producing future employees, and I can't remember what the blame was on employers. So we spent a large time collecting data, telling this story about our families, the challenges of schools, the challenges of all, and had a day of learning. We had over 100 community members to kind of hear this story of the realities of all, and it flipped the conversation to looking at solutions rather than the blame. And so that for us was such a cool thing to be a part of our community. I think it's still prevalent today.
Thank you, Clarissa. So I know we are at time, but there is one more question that I need to ask, and you can choose which one you would prefer to ask. The one option is, what is your biggest takeaway from your journey? Or you can answer, if you had to give one piece of advice to another agency that wants to implement a similar project or a similar approach to their current services, what advice would you give them? So we can do that. And since Clarissa talked last, I'll let her go first, and you can give us your parting pieces of wisdom. Go ahead.
My parting words of wisdom, I have two, is that community action does hard things, and everything that we're working on and talking about wasn't easy. And but we did it. We do hard things, and it takes time. it just takes time. So to think long term, and you'll do great.
Okay, we'll hand off to Jennifer next.
I guess just a piece of advice is if you're really interested in doing this, something to serve homeless youth, start out small. I wouldn't recommend jumping into opening a youth crisis center. I would recommend starting out with just trying to serve the homeless. And then once you get your footing for learning how to serve the homeless, then grow from there. That's what I recommend. And if you need any help, please contact me. And I've got a manual for everything. And anybody that knows me knows I'm willing to share. And I'll help any way I can. I'm a firm believer in sharing with our sister agencies. And I'll help any way I can, but I do recommend starting out small, getting your feet wet, and growing your programs.
Thank you for that, Thelma.
Well, my piece of advice came from my case management team leader. If it was easy, everybody would do it. That's per Ms. Jean Monroe. But the other piece I would say is get your team engaged and be ready to, from the beginning, really get a core team that, is willing to go slow to go far. And as Sydney said, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So that would be our piece of advice.
Wonderful. Thelma, Clarissa, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure. I really wish we had more time to talk more because I literally had a list of questions that I wanted to get through. I should at least schedule an hour and a half because I knew this was it would have been a really good, robust conversation. But with that, Denise, let's bring up the slides so we can close out really quickly. So we just wanted to share a few NCAP resources. So one of the resources we have is Fresh Find. It is an opportunity where you can we have partners. So different webinars, funding opportunities, or different resources as it relates to our work. That's what we host or have on our Fresh Find site on the NCAP website. Another resource that we have is our Webinar Wednesdays. This webinar was a part of our Webinar Wednesday schedule. We have very robust webinars that we will have, some other ones that I will mention shortly, but Webinar Wednesdays, and there's a plethora of them. So that is another great resource. The next thing is Community Action Academy, which is a great resource where you can find different e-courses, different information, webinars, which is really great, another great resources. The next portion of things are upcoming events that we have or upcoming learning opportunities. Next week, we have a webinar that is going to be facilitated for the National Alliance in Homelessness. And it's deepening community action, engagement, and homeless service delivery. This fits very closely into what Jennifer and her in the Ryan's Place initiative, because it is centered around homelessness. So this is another great learning opportunity. This will be our second webinar with this agency, with the National Alliance in Homelessness. And so we also do have that available on the NCAP website. So you will be able to see the previous information that was also shared. The next webinar that we'll have is reimagining your impact with a whole family approach. I think one thing that Thelma mentioned several times is with the STAND project is they took a whole family approach to dealing or tackling recidivism. So this is a great opportunity to, if you're not familiar with the whole family approach, this is a great opportunity for you to get exposed to the whole family approach and ask any questions that you can take on with you as you continue on your work. Next slide. And with that, we are excited. Annual convention is going to be in Atlanta this year. Registration is now open. So get your tickets and get your spots, and we hope to see you in the great state of Georgia. And last but certainly not least, we would like to hear from you, how you enjoyed this webinar and what we can do for other webinars going forward. So with that, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time and hearing about some of the innovative work that our network is doing. We are so proud of the work that's being done, and happy Community Action Month. Thank you. Have a good one.